Hello everyone, it's Matthew McKenzie here again, and just to let you know, I'm going to be just talking just a little bit. I'll make this a long lecture, but just a little bit regarding care guilt and shame in culturally tight-knit communities. Um, Basically, a bit about myself. I am the facilitator of the National Ethnic Mental Health Carers Forum. Basically, what that group does, what the online group does basically is give those who care for someone living with long-term mental illness a chance to engage with services, also be a community themselves, learn from each other in the spirit, I suppose, to promote better outcomes for minority, ethnic, unpaid carers. It's not purely the group for ethnic minority. Any carer can attend, to be honest. At the end of the day, we're all trying to learn from each other. And this is one of the points of this video. But technically, I could say this sort of topic is very complex. I'm not going to do it much justice, but it's just an introductory video as to why I feel that it is important to pay attention to care, guilt, and shame in culturally tight communities. Before we go any further, though, if you do like the content of this video, and there are other videos similar to this, but I do promote focus on unpaid carers, not just ethnic minority carers, unpaid carers, especially in regard to those caring for some of mental health needs, and the focus on health and equalities. Do subscribe, go give the video a like, or if you wish, just comment on the video and its content. So you might sort of feel, hang on, Matthew's going to be talking about ethnic minorities in full. That's not quite the truth. Some, if not all of the themes, or most of the themes, actually are common to all unpaid carers of different backgrounds. It's not just the focus on ethnic minorities, like Black, Asian, Indian, traveling communities, LGBTQ plus, and so on. But a fair bit of the themes that pop up, you might recognize as stating, yep, this is really an issue for tight-knit communities when someone in that community is caring for someone who is chronically unwell, specifically living with mental illness. So to kick this all off, when situations like these arise, the love for the cared for person is never in doubt. We feel that the carer, regardless of the background, will do their very best to provide the best support and care for the person that they are close to, most likely in the family. The problem is it can lead to challenges, as I will soon describe. And this would be the issue of the emotional weight and cultural expectations and pressure from it within the community and even outside it as well. This can also lead to further issues which will create barriers and boundaries for the unpaid carer. One of the biggest things that can impact on unpaid carers, especially in culturally tight-knit communities, is the guilt and shame. Those are hidden challenges, not only to those trying to reach the care or the cared for, but also where the carer is trying to reach out because they won't do this because of the guilt and the shame regarding their caring role, especially if it's mental ill health. The culturally tight community may have expectations, but they might not be the same or realistic in regards to what that particular family or what that carer is going through in their caring role. One thing that is quite important that is trying to tackle this thing, and this is a set of processes and policies from NHS England regarding the patient care race equality framework. PCREF for short is quite a mouthful, to be honest. The thing obviously linked to my forum is we as a group do support PCREF and what it's trying to do. However, we we have the particular focus, obviously, in recognizing carers' voices and well-being. I'm not saying PCREF is everything and is the only thing out there, but it is important, and it's one of the things it does try to do is break down the guilt and shame in such communities. As a reminder, PCREF is set of policies in regards to what NHS England is doing to tackle the unequal outcomes for minority groups, especially using mental health services. That's what its core focus is on, mental health services. Going back to the cultural idea of caring and the issues it can raise, I'm not saying being in a community, a close community, is a problem in itself. It isn't. But there are challenges when it comes to ill health, keeping it in the family, and supporting unpaid carers. Now, in some communities, not all, but in some of them, caring is seen actually as a moral duty and as a family honor. After all, isn't that what makes community? And do remember, there's not just on ethnic minorities. A lot of these things can be seen, can be experienced from any carer of a background. We basically look after our own. It would be dishonorable if we don't. And it can be a deeply rooted tradition, deeply rooted value. The idea of that themes, it creates strong family bonds. It creates a form of identity or form of belonging to that community. We keep it in the family, we keep it in the community. This is the way it's always been. And to extend this to carers from different backgrounds, the perfect carer never complains or needs help. But as I've mentioned, this does create challenges, it does create problems. The other thing in regards to the cultural ideal of caring is that weakness is never shown, and this can actually be extended further if perhaps from a male background, male identity, or gender, I would say, compared to female. You just cope. You don't want to show that weakness, even if it's under strain, even if you're shown to be under strain, you won't reach out. All this and more obviously will lead to forms of burnout, but even that can remain hidden under that cultural duty. As you can see from the pictures I've mentioned here, don't talk about it. Looking at the cultural, religious theme, just pray about it, or keep it in the family. And if something goes wrong, as you can see with my second picture, uh, communities can actually turn on each other. They can put the blame on the family, saying, why aren't you solving this issue? What's the problem here? You're staying in our community, you're staying in our name. And it's not really like that at all. So how does guilt creep in regards to the cultural norms or close-knit communities? What's the issue here, and how can it affect the unpaid carer? Well, if you're caring, you can't get out there. It's also a duty to take part in community events and themes and gatherings. But the problem is you're in a caring role. I'll give an example, you're caring for your father who may have gone through addiction issues, causing mental health for them. So you have to drop something. Community leaders may notice these, and they might sort of say, look, you sort of let the community down, you're letting people down, you're not gathering to these events. Taking that away from the cultural concept, as I've said, this is not only the theme for ethnic minority unpaid carers, this can affect other carers who, again, may miss family gatherings, not turn up to events, and people are wondering what's going on. Some people might understand, but there's a situation that because you've missed those events, you feel that you've let people down. There may be resentment and frustration. This is a dangerous one because the carer can actually maybe lash out at the cared for. Can also lead to personal guilt as the carer could sort of lash out at themselves, thinking that they're failing in the caring duty because they're not able to cope with certain things. And because they're feeling they're not able to cope with certain things, they're going to feel like, look, I need a break. I'm going to get burnout. But as soon as they think that way, they're going to start thinking, hang on, this personal time I'm requiring is selfish. I'm not suffering as much as the person that I'm caring for. And because of that, it's almost, like a catch-22. You really need that personal time because of that guilt creeping in. You don't want to request it. You can't take time out to do this. And you're seeing it as selfish, but you can't ignore that the pressures and challenges that you're trying to cope with in your caring role um, isn't having a detrimental impact to your own well-being, your own mental and physical well-being. One tricky thing is in a large community, large family, there's a belief that you as the carer should be able to handle this alone, but this can't always be the case, and it is heavily dependent on the condition or the diagnosis of the cared for. Obviously, the more worse the condition, the more challenging that this would be to the unpaid carer. Uh, and that belief, unfortunately, can create a lot of issues. You can't completely handle this alone for a long length of time. Failing this obviously allows guilt to creep in. And there'll be fears of others judging the family, as in a tight-knit community, they will sort of think to themselves, why are you missing life and not turning up to, our events, our gatherings? And you yourself are thinking, I don't want to be judged. The family is struggling with caring for mental health. And others will judge if it's a close communities, others will know. In a close-knit community, the idea of it is that they are close, so how can they not know? Not all communities are alike, unfortunately, and they may not understand mental health stigma, and they may feel it's a family issue. And because of that, the carer themselves are worried about what others are thinking, causing them to keep everything all in, causing them to feel guilty that they can't solve the issue. And asking for help means that you're actually failing your duty, not in all communities, but in some. Um, and again, that's a blow in the sense that you're not getting the help that you need, and thus you're almost stuck, not only in the community that may not understand your role as a carer, but you can't reach out to the services that'll seem to try and understand uh, and learn from the issues that you're coping, but want to provide better outcomes. And basically, I'm basically talking about patient care race equality framework, looking to improve mental health services for those close-knit communities, ethnic minority communities, when it comes to mental illness. Lastly, continue on in this particular theme regarding guilt and shame. Because of the shame, because of that guilt, you're obviously going to avoid talking about those struggles. And even if you are noticed by the mental health services, by project outreach in regards to unpaid carers, you still might reject offers of help in order to save that save face. There are communities that uh, will put a lot of effort into saving face, but remember this sort of focus or practice does have its own challenges. I've given some examples, especially internalized comments. The carer may sort of think, from tradition to tradition, this has been handed down to me as my duty, or you've been told, this is your duty. You have a specific role in the family, a specific role in that community. Um, you must put up a front. Uh, we don't put family in care. We don't go on respite. It's not someone else's job. It's not someone else's duty. It's yours. Um, you should man up. You should show an example as to what a close-knit community is, and just sort of providing examples, basically. And we've got another one, don't tell anyone or people will talk. And this is a tragedy, really. There are communities out there that will talk and gossip and, may misunderstand what the situation is. They might not know much about mental ill health. They probably don't even have a word in their culture for or language for carer. Some communities don't have a word for it. You just do things as it is. It's always been that way as it is. So don't tell anyone, or people will talk. And the more they would talk, the more you feel isolated. And as you can see in that second picture, I've put in a religious setting. This can be common for not all religious groups, there's specific groups, community groups that have a religious cultural identity. The problem may be that there hasn't been any space, discussion, or focus for mental ill health in the community. So linking back to the patient care race equality framework, which is an NHS England focus, um, it, as I've mentioned, it does look into tackling inequalities in mental health care. It is a double tragedy if you're struggling with mental ill health or caring for someone with mental ill health in a close-knit ethnic minority community, only to find that mental health care system is also struggling with inequalities and outcomes for ethnic minorities. So they're gonna, if you're from an ethnic minority background, you're gonna look at the mental system and think, I don't want those outcomes. Um, so I'd rather try and deal with the struggles in the community. It might seem terrible, but I'd rather that than, you know, uh, being ostracized and isolated and seeing your loved ones suffer even more under the mental system. PCREF looks to change all that. But one of the big things we try and focus on in the forum, in a National Mental Health Ethnic Carer Forum, is the C in PCREF. Carers' voices must also be central. You can't always be the focus on patient or lived experience patient and what affects them. There's no doubt there's a lot that does affect those who lived experience in services, but we can't ignore the focus on families and carers, on the things that they experience or go through or are hit with. The thing is, guilt and shame does stop carers from engaging with services. So there is a fair bit of work for how can those who represent PCREF engage and work with minority carers through the PCREF system. Systems, and this is the job for PCREF as well, or those who represent PCREF or battle to get PCREF to be known, must examine and see those cultural barriers that affect minority families and carers, just as I've described. I'm not saying that this isn't a focus on issue for those within that community, but it's important those who represent mental health systems to be aware of those cultural barriers, and also for carers themselves, so they don't sort of see themselves as failing the community or the identity of that community. So how do we break that cycle regarding minority carers that are struggling in close-knit communities? We're looking to meet in the middle. We can't just assume or have biases regarding what works for mental ill health in those communities. One of the only or best ways, actually not the only way, is to engage at those settings, like religious gatherings, cultural gatherings, listening to minority carers and patients, obviously, what struggles they have, and what would work for them to engage more. And education, we're all in this together, we're all trying to educate each other on how to get better outcomes from mental health services. Training staff to understand those community values and avoiding assumptions about disengaged carers. You can't sort of see those not wanting to engage with services that might not have the best outcomes for minority carers. To assume that they're lazy or that they are purposely putting the patient at risk because they don't want to engage with services. As I said, the only way to avoid those assumptions is to be at those cultural gatherings, community events, um, settings where minority carers can feed back. And this actually is linked to what I've just said. It's not just going to those settings; it's actually creating settings that are safe to be heard, non-judgmental spaces. It can be in actions as well, but it's also important that we have areas within mental services where minority carers feel invited and not put off from wanting to engage with mental health professionals. This is something I've always said. I said this at an event over in North London where we had North East London Foundation Trust on the work that they are doing with the patient care race equality framework. And I said at my talk that we need more role models, especially positive ones that can influence others and say, listen, sharing your stories, reaching out for help, isn't a weakness. You shouldn't feel guilt or shame about this. Everyone can benefit, but obviously it starts with yourself. But it's important that mental health NHS trusts, mental health systems promote those who are positive role models, because in turn, other ethnic minority communities will see this and will think, this is a positive outcome for our community. I'm not saying there's many of them. In fact, there's very, very few of them, but it's important that we share those role models to inspire others. Promoting self-care as a strength and it's not a weakness as another way to rid of guilt and shame in the caring role. We all need help sometimes. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just admitting to us that we do. So it's not a weakness. And I've mentioned this earlier on anyway, engage with those community leaders and faith networks about what PCREF is and what it's trying to do, but also trying to understand why or who or what is causing those who are caring for someone not to reach out for help. And use those trusted voices. This is almost linked to role models, but use trusted voices to change stigma, which is still there. There is stigma for being a mental health carer. There's definitely stigma, obviously, for being a mental health patient. But to break that cycle, we must use those trusted voices to change that stigma. And this is putting the C back into PCREF, including carers in service design and decision making. So that way, there's a chance that system is also built by patients and carers in the form of co-production. Well, I hope this video has sort of been an eye-opener in a sense that it creates a bit of conversation. I've not really done it much justice. It's a very complex, tricky issue. Um, Cultural stigma, tight-knit communities can be tricky to understand. One of the reasons is that it's close-knit. They're not often, not all communities like this, but then there's some that may not be often or open for engagement from mental health services, let alone having the chance for minority carers to reach out and get that support. So it's a lot of work involved. Nevertheless, it's very important, and this is one of the reasons I decided to make a video to help raise that awareness and try and break stigma. I'd say thanks for watching, and do subscribe. I will, of course, release more videos soon, or blogs at caremindblog.com. I'll put the description in the YouTube video. Thanks, and take care of yourself.